Are you ready to navigate the new way to work? Forbes Books presents Dare to Care in the Workplace with Kathleen Quinn Botaw. Here's Kathleen.
So my guest today is very special. She is not only an amazing professional, but she is a woman who's overcome much. Paula Schneider, President and Chief Executive Officer at Susan G. Komen. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
I'm very excited about this discussion for many different reasons.
Yeah.
Because you've done so much and so many really cool and interesting things in your life. And that's kind of what I want to start with. I mean, most people meet us where we are, but they don't know the journey you've been on. So can you bring us through your journey from as early as you want to go? And
I won't start at birth, so we don't have to go back that far. But my career prior to being in philanthropic activities and being at Komen was in the retail and fashion arena for many, many, many moons, like 30 years. And that was essentially a backdrop for everything that I did. And I started my own company early on when I was like 25. And then I ended up working for BCBG. And then I went from running BCBG to running Laundry by Shelley Siegel to moving into the swimwear world and running the largest swimwear company, including Speedo and Calvin Klein and all the mass market swimwear manufacturing. We had our own manufacturing plant in Mexico with thousands of people there. And then I moved into private equity and bought companies for a while. And then from there, I went into, I ran American Apparel and that bucket of crazy. And that was a while, about a 2-year stint, which was, quite a big part of pop culture in LA for sure. And most people know of American Apparel, but some don't know the story in the background about it. But, that might be a tale for another day, or maybe it'll come up today. I don't know. And then I was running Seven. I was the CEO of Seven for All Mankind and Splendid and Ella Moss. And this opportunity presented itself. And I kind of live in this metaphysical world where I think you put out what you put out and then you receive back. And I had been thinking about how I wanted to do something that was more meaningful with my life. And, I could certainly sell another pair of jeans to Bloomingdale's. I mean, I knew how to do that all day long. But so I was getting an award at the Women in Retail Conference. And I was being one of the top female retailers in the country. And I was supposed to get up and speak about being empowered and something to do with, the fashion industry or retail. And I really had nothing. But I am a breast cancer survivor. So when I got up, I spoke about how I felt the most empowered when I was the least physically powerful when I was in chemo and when I was in treatment. Because when you're used to being large and in charge of your business, your family, your social life, all of the things in your world, and you can no longer be large and in charge. And like I was so sick during chemo that I couldn't even get to the bathroom by myself. You have to have the grace to let other people help you. And it's not easy. But once you learn that skill, then it's something that you can, just draw upon if you need it, because it was not really that surprising that I had this fantastic support system. It was just watching it in motion was pretty amazing.
It is a gift, isn't it? And, many of you know I'm in the middle of my breast cancer journey. Paula, I'm so impressed with what you've done and your background. But those moments when you're weak, or we think we're being weak, is really a moment that you have to pause and ask for help, is really where you find yourself. And you find those who love you most and who put you first.
Yeah. And when I got done with that speech, I sat down next to a friend of mine. We literally had breakfast that morning and talked about how we were both running publicly traded companies, and we're hiding in the corner talking about how we don't want to do this anymore and we want to find something that's more meaningful. And so I sat down next to her afterwards, and she, while I was on stage, got an email from a recruiter friend of hers that was looking for a CEO of Komen, and of Susan G. Komen. And, she said, "Oh my God, this happened while you were on stage talking about your journey. And would you ever be interested in that?" And I said, yes, I would. And it literally took that long. But I was not a real candidate actually for it, but, because, I lived in LA, the job was in Texas, and never had any philanthropic background before, other than raising a lot of money through my friends for breast cancer since the time I had a diagnosis. But it turned out, it was about a 3-month time frame of interviewing for this role. But that was on Thursday, I got the job rec. On Friday, on Monday, I quit my job. And that was at 7. And, it was the best move I made. I didn't even have an interview yet. But, if you're running a company that's publicly traded, you have to have integrity and not be looking for a job when you want to make a move. You have to just decide you're going to make a move and then figure it out. I felt like even if it didn't happen here at Komen, I would find some way to do something that was more meaningful for me.
Yeah, you've used that word meaningful and meaningfulness. Can you define it for yourself?
Yeah, I believe that if I go to work every single day and I do something that's good for the world, then that's meaningful. I remember the very first day, we don't have offices anymore because we're completely virtual since COVID, but I walked into the office and I had never been there before. And there was a big pink wall, as you can imagine, right outside my office. And it said that the work you do here saves lives. And I thought, wow, that's a big onus of responsibility to be able to do that. And I remember when I was interviewing for the board, I said, I have never been in philanthropy before. I think I'd be awesome at this. But if you have somebody better, you need to pick them, because this is really important to me personally. My mom died of metastatic breast cancer. I had breast cancer. My brother died of metastatic prostate cancer. My sister had melanoma, but she's fine. My husband carries a BRCA gene mutation, and I have 2 grown daughters. So, enough said. I mean, I'm in it to win it, because my daughters, I have to save them, and they're illustrative of every other young woman that's out there.
Absolutely. I so agree with you. And that meaningfulness, sometimes we walk through life and, we do what we think we're supposed to do versus grab onto the things that give us the most meaning and move us greatly. Therefore, we can move others. And I think that's what, we're all trying to be called to do. And you've done it, and you say you weren't cut out for, a philanthropic CEO role. Well, guess what? Making money is what philanthropic world is all. You've got to have money to serve the community. So I always thought this nonprofit, it's not making profit. It is, you must know how to make money and capitalize on money so you can help more people. It's kind of a little reverse psychology there. It's not nonprofit, it's lots of profit, so we can make people better, hopefully, and get the best research we possibly can out there. Don't you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's interesting because if you were running any other kind of business, which I have, and I've run publicly traded companies, I've run, very large companies, and what the expectation is for nonprofits is so unreasonable in so many ways. There's nothing that's going to cure cancer other than cash. Because cash pays for research, cash pays for, we have a financial assistance program where we help women today that are, in the midst of breast cancer and can't afford treatment. We do public policy and advocacy. We have health equity initiatives. I mean, there's so many things that we do, and it all costs money to do. And it's really interesting because, you're held at this, like, you must make 65% or more has to go to the mission of the business, of the organization, and that's kind of a rule of thumb that's out there. We're at that number, but it's so challenging. If you were running a for-profit business and you had to have a 35% EBITDA, how many would be out there? Expectation of philanthropies is so much more difficult than the expectation for a for-profit business in a lot of ways.
Yeah, they make it hard for you to do good. And it's kind of crazy. Since I got my cancer diagnosis in August, I've been reading article after article after article, and so many women and men, because breast cancer happens to men as well, they cannot access care. They don't have the right health care, or they live in rural areas. And so they make different decisions that maybe they wouldn't make because they don't have access to care. And that's what you're doing. You're trying to educate, make sure there's access to care, that people understand there's protocols, that people understand they didn't do anything wrong either. I hear this theme out there, oh, well, what did you do to get cancer?
Yeah.
And I wanted to smack somebody in the head about the whole thing. But nobody did anything to get cancer. It happens. Like your husband has the BRCA, I think you said. I carry the CHEK2 mutation. We didn't do anything wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. Your mother didn't do anything wrong. So there's this whole weird mindset around illness, around cancer, and then there's access to care. So I want to settle first on the mindset of, cancer and being sick, and, from the patient point of view, and then from those around them point of view.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's almost as high as 1 in 2 people will get cancer in their lifetime of some form, right? So it's not like it's a when or an if, it's a when, right? And if 1 in 8 women will have breast cancer. Breast cancer is the most expensive cancer to treat of all cancers. And there's an average between 11 and 14 doctors that you will see on your journey. And then can you imagine what that feels like? I get it. When you get all of those bills in and you're trying to sort through it, and even if you have the best insurance, you speak the language, all of those things, then it's still a very rocky road, right? So we have a helpline that essentially about 60,000 people called last year, which is an extreme amount of folks to manage, right? And we are making sure that no one has to go through no one has to go through a diagnosis alone, that there's opportunities for you to learn more. We have, here's your family, look at your family health history. You should have this form. These are the questions that you should ask your doctor. If you're below a certain percentage of income, we have financial assistance programs where we, give them to adults that are dealing with cancer that can make the decisions of whether or not they want to spend it for food on their table or want to make sure that they can get babysitting so that they can go to their chemo treatments or whatever it may be, to try and keep people in treatment, because that's the only thing that's going to make a difference. I wrote an article about how having cancer has made me a better CEO. To me, it's personal, right? But I think you learn a lot of kindness and you learn empathy, especially if you've had a life-threatening disease. And, when I had it, my kids were young. My girls one was going into junior high, one was going into high school. And it's a very challenging thing to have the mother, matriarch of the family, sort of pulled out into this world. There's all kinds of financial ramifications, which there's all kinds of emotional ramifications, which, it's a very, you're going through it, you know how it feels, and it's a very, very scary place to be. And there's just so much that people don't know about cancer. And certainly, if you have certain types of like lung cancer, people always think, okay, they were smokers. There's many, many, many forms of lung cancer that people get without ever having had a cigarette. So you have to have some empathy, especially in the workplace. I mean, Komen, of course, is like the softest place to work because we have so many. First of all, we're almost all women. And secondly, we have so many women that have had either a breast cancer diagnosis themselves or someone around them. But there is, other stories written from other CEOs that have gone through health battles and understand that it creates this empathy or this ability for you to deal with your workforce in a different way. And you hope it doesn't come to that, because you don't want anyone to have to go through it themselves in order to feel it. But this is something that happens, like maternity leave might happen, or, any of those other things that have people leave the workforce for a while. And hopefully that they can get back in. I remember, when I had cancer, my biggest concern was losing my job. You hear you're worried about dying, but your biggest concern is, oh my God, am I going to be able to afford my family?
Where were you working when you got diagnosed?
I was working at Warnaco Swimwear Group at the time. And, I was running, and it's kind of a funny story, not haha, but it shows how much that, when you're used to being large and in charge, you don't really take care of yourself or put yourself first. I was in the middle of a massive restructure where we had a layoff of about 300 people, and we're changing the way we do business and all of those different things, which is really tough to begin with. And I felt a lump in the middle of that process, and I went to the doctor and I got diagnosed with cancer. And I asked him, I said, so can I have 3 weeks before I start treatment, because I'm in the middle of this massive restructure and I really need to get my team through it, or will I die if I wait? And he's like, well, I don't think you'll die if you wait, but I wouldn't wait any longer than that, because I had a very aggressive form of breast cancer. And I remember I made it through the restructure. I helped, people along with that. And that was like on Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday, I told my team I had cancer, and Thursday I went into treatment. So, I mean, that was a rough week. When you think about rough weeks in your life, that was certainly one of them.
You managed to get through the reorg. I think
I did. I had, and I felt a need to do that because I had a really, a team that was working so hard on trying to make this business run. And at that time I was a turnaround girl. That's not an easy place to be, but it's different than being in growth businesses, which I've been in as well, which are a lot more fun because, they're different. And it's kind of funny because, when I came to Komen, it wasn't raising as much money as it had in the past, but it was tweaks and not turnarounds until COVID hit, and then it became a massive turnaround because we had to change literally the entire way we do business. Because if you think about, we had an affiliate construction rate. Essentially what it was 63 affiliates that were all their own governance boards and their own ability, to make their money. And then they gave money into the corporate entity that was used for research. And it had been this way since the dawn of time. And it's a very difficult business model to begin with, and one that I would have always liked to have changed and was working towards that end and openly saying that this is not a great business model. And then COVID happened, and within 3 weeks, we literally stopped the entire affiliate model, went into a single incorporation, the beginnings of a single incorporation, which took 2 years to do. We went on, completely virtual, but I'm capable, and my background is such, you got to make decisions quickly, especially when the world was on fire. And most philanthropic organizations had 3 months of runway. We luckily had a lot more than that, but there were a lot that went out of business just because COVID went on so long. And I knew that if we had this affiliate network where 75% of everything that they made was by bringing, 10,000 of their closest friends together in races and walks, we weren't going to be doing that for a long time. So we were going to lose our ability to keep the community effort, which is one of the main differentiators for Komen, because we work deeply in community. So we still work deeply in community. We just do it a little bit differently than we have before. And now we have everyone as one Komen as opposed to an affiliate network. And it also is far less waste as well for the organization, because we don't need 63 different marketing people and 63 different IT people. And, all of those businesses that we're running as sort of their standalone businesses now can be supported, and we can do the work that's most important in the field.
Yes, I believe that's a great change for Komen, and thank God you had that turnaround girl skill. Which one of the prior experiences that you had before you joined Komen was the one you pull on the most now that informs you in your current role? Or is it several of them?
Yeah, I think, there's different things for different reasons. There are some companies that were total turnarounds that were really messy. And that teaches you to sort of stay calm while there's fires burning all around you. When I left American Apparel, I remember going to the board and saying to them, you should hire another cancer survivor as, your next CEO here. And I remember him looking at me like I had two heads. And I said, no, because there's so many things that happen every day that you can't get someone that's going to sweat the small stuff. You got to get someone who's going to be okay with the big picture. And once you've been close to death, and you've had this experience, there's very little that ruffles me, right? So, I learned that there. I learned from working in private equity great presentational skills.
Yes.
Because they are unbelievable at presentational skills.
They are good. Those decks are great, aren't they?
Fantastic. I still use some of my decks that I learned in private equity. And you just learn by doing. There's some wisdom in doing this for a long time to become a better leader. You see what works, you see what doesn't. You try not to make the same mistakes twice. But, I know that you had the opportunity this morning. You shared my article on the imposter syndrome.
I loved it. I loved every minute of it. So first of all, let me tell you, I am going to see David Grohl and the Foo Fighters in the summer. So my husband was so excited. He's like, what? So we're geeking out about the Foo Fighters. And then I'm digging into the article about the imposter syndrome. We all have it some way or another. And you talk a lot about using your transferable skills, listening, and applying. So, I love that article. Could you share your point of view on that with our listeners?
Yeah. I remember when I was going into Komen, and I called a good friend and one of my best friends, and I said to her, I got this new role and I'm going to be the CEO of Susan Komen. And she laughed and she said, and what the F do you know about that? And I remember thinking, and she said, what are you going to do the first day there? And I said, I'm going to listen, because I don't know. I mean, I know what I know from my own breast cancer diagnosis, which is very, very peripheral, right? It's not deep, or I'm not a medical doctor. And they had a medical doctor who was the CEO for the 3 years prior to me, which is going to be a completely different leadership style, different area of expertise, and all of those things, right? But to me, I think you have to understand, what you know, and then know what you don't know, which is equally as important as knowing what you know. And the imposter syndrome article that I wrote was kind of a little bit tongue in cheek, because it was saying that every single job I've ever had, I have a recurring dream that I am in a boardroom or in a meeting or something like that, and they're all speaking to me, and I have no idea what they're talking about. I mean, I can't even understand the language. It's kind of like if you've ever had where you're trying to dial your phone in a dream and you can't get the number right. That's what it felt like. And, you're sweating and you're thinking, oh my God, did I make the wrong decision? How can I lead this crew? I don't even know what they're talking about. Well, this was really true when I got to Komen. I remember we had this fantastic scientific advisory board, which we still have, and they're made up of the top docs in the world. And there was a wonderful man, Dr. George Sledge, who was the head of Stanford Oncology, and he was the head of our scientific advisory board. And I was going to be in his area early on when I first got on here. And I'm sure that most of these scientific advisors looked at their choice and thought, what are they doing bringing Fashion Girl in from the retail and wholesale world and putting her in as the head of Komen? I mean, what background does she have that would give her that right and that responsibility? And so I went out to dinner with George, and I thought to myself, gee, I don't even know what we're going to talk about. He's so lovely. We sat down, we had dinner, and he said to me in the middle of dinner, Paula, if you'd like, I can give you some of the tutelage of, all the medical terms and all of that, so you'd be able to talk more about the subject matter at hand. And I said, oh, George, let me just tell you how that would go. Okay. It would be like me learning Chinese and having to deal at the highest levels of the Chinese government. No one's going to believe a word I have to say. I said, why don't I do what I do best, which is be the leader of the band? And that's why I use the Dave Grohl as a moment there. And let me lead the band, and I promise you I will get the best people in the best positions that will support you. But for right now, if you could just come with me to some of these meetings that we have, because I'm not going to be able to talk to the scientists at Genentech about what it is that we're doing in breast cancer and be believable. And why would they believe me? I don't have the background. I don't have the skill set. I don't have the knowledge, and I know it. So you do what you do best, and I promise you I'll do what I do best. And we have had a lovely relationship. He's come to many, many meetings. In the meantime, I have learned a lot more. But, when you start talking about the glories of the cell cycle, you kind of lose me. I mean, that's it. I'm on. And there's certain panels that I will talk on, and other panels I need my mission team to do. And that's okay. So the David Grohl story, or how we came up with the David Grohl story, was essentially that, you don't have to know every instrument to play in a band. You just have to keep the band together. You have to keep them, motivated to go in the right direction. And that was sort of the storyline that I was using, because I don't know all of the parts and pieces. And there's areas, if I had to be undercover CEO in certain areas of my organization, I would fail miserably. Other areas, I would be perfectly fine. But, you don't know everything. And it's just better if you know that when you're walking in.
Right. Nobody knows everything. And I firmly believe that we're stronger because the sum of us is better than any one of us. And, I'd love to delve deeper into your leadership journey, but we'll have to pause here. Next time on Dare to Care in the Workplace, Paula Schneider, president and CEO of Susan G. Komen, will discuss the challenges her foundation is tackling.
Diagnostics. If you have insurance that covers mammogram, but you may not have one that then covers diagnostics, and that's expensive. So you're going to spend, $1,000 if you don't have it, and you're told, yeah, I think we see something in there. It doesn't look great. But we have to do a neat core needle biopsy in order for us to really tell. And you can't afford to get that done. You're going to be living with breast cancer, or you may be living with breast cancer, and things like that we are fighting the fight behind the scenes. So it's really, really, really important work.
This has been Dare to Care in the Workplace. To connect with Kathleen, go to KathleenQuinnBotaw.com. Kathleen's book, Dare to Care, is available wherever books are sold. Dare to Care in the Workplace is a production of Forbes Books.